Hello everyone, Rob Guest from football.london here, and welcome to the latest episode of Gold Guest Talk Tottenham, sponsored by NordVPN. Joining me today, it's Alasdair Gold. How are you?
Oh, amazing. Thanks for asking. Hope you are too. Yeah, not so well. Not so well. Why couldn't we have just done this podcast on Friday, left it there, maybe done another one in a couple of months' time? It's just honestly, what a dreadful Sunday that was.
Yeah, what a club, honestly. Every
Oh,
time they seem to turn a corner, just go back on themselves, and 2-1 defeat at home to Leicester on Sunday. Leicester, I mean, came into the game, horrendous run of form as well, but classic Dr. Tottenham. Ipswich went to Spurs start of November without a win in the Premier League. Managed to get 3 points. Leicester, in their hour of need as well, managed to get 3 points at Spurs, and it means it's a huge, huge week coming up for Ange Postecoglou and Spurs. Not only in terms of the transfer market, but Elfsborg in the Europa League on Thursday, and then a really tricky away game coming up against Brentford on Sunday at the G-Tech Community Stadium. Before we discuss all that, we'll get straight into yesterday's defeat against Leicester City. All looked good for Spurs at halftime. Richarlison scoring a header, but then he was just a bit of a mad 5-minute spell after halftime. Jamie Vardy and Bilal Al-Khanous scoring the goals to put Leicester City into the lead, and I think the reaction in the stadium said everything.
yeah, it's just. Oh, it's just, I really can't be bothered to talk about it. It just shows you how bad it was. But that's the weird thing about it. It's like everything became bad because of that 5-minute spell. Exactly like you said, the first half was okay. You could see the players were tired, and it was the same ones out there again. You could see Pat Matasar wasn't really in the right kind of shape to be able to play a match, and we'll go into that and the reasons why, and Maddison's absence. Richarlison, you could see that he was struggling a little bit towards the end of the half, but scored a fantastic goal. Really well improvised header from Pedro Porro's lovely curling cross. And you're kind of thinking, okay, they're against a team second from bottom. Was it 7 defeats in a row? They should be able to at least, get through this. I think I put in my half-time kind of tweet, I said, it's going to be tough because Spurs are going to tire. And I didn't actually expect it to be early in the second half when it all went wrong, but it was. It's 5 minutes of just dreadful defending, absolutely awful defending, and that killed it. It kind of killed the rest of the game because from that point on, Spurs didn't really have the players or the energy or ideas to really find a proper way back. I think if they'd been able to have the kind of freshness they did in the first half and the players, they probably would have found a way back. Maybe. I'm not saying I'm not guaranteeing it, but they might have done. Whereas obviously Richarlison had to come off because he was feeling discomfort in his groin, and Sarr just couldn't continue any longer, and they were kind of having to bring on Reguilon. And look, Mikey Moore is going to be an incredible talent, but if you're looking for a 17-year-old boy to save your kind of team on the day, it's just so wrong that it's been allowed to get to that situation. And yeah, the atmosphere turned. I mean, there were chants in the first half, a lot of Levy chants, the Kulusevski chant we hear, but also Levy out chants. And normally it mainly comes from the south stand, but this time it was properly spreading around the stadium as well. And they just couldn't find that way back. And it was an embarrassing result, to be honest. It was embarrassing. It was a game they had to win. It's as simple as that, really. They had to win. They had to kind of start pushing in the right direction because, let's be honest, on paper it was the easier of the league games they were going to have in this little run, and they completely messed it up. And yeah, I mean the position they are in now. I mean, just kind of reeling off some of the things. They are still the third highest scorers in the Premier League, yet they're 15th. They've won just one of their past 11 matches, and they've failed to win any of the previous 7 in the Premier League. This is all. And they're currently closer to the drop zone, the relegation zone, than they are to 10th place in the league. And it's just, that's not good enough. It's absolutely not good enough. I know the players are knackered, and this is a kind of a collective responsibility thing for me. It's obviously there's some aspects with Postecoglou, but there's also even more so for me that the position that the club has allowed itself to get into, which is just ridiculous.
I mean, it is a ridiculous situation now looking at the league table, but it could be even worse before Sunday's game at Brentford, because I was explaining to you earlier, there's a big weekend of Premier League fixtures at the bottom of the table. Everton play Leicester. If Everton beat Leicester on Saturday, Everton go above Spurs, so that'll mean Spurs will be 16th. And then a couple of other games towards the bottom. There's Wolves against Aston Villa. That's at Molineux. Villa have been struggling a bit in terms of getting the wins recently, so there's no guarantee they're going to go to the West Midlands and win. And then it's Ipswich against Southampton at Portman Road. Now, if Ipswich win, if Wolves win, there's only 5 points between Spurs and the bottom three.
Yep.
It's mad. And I mean, there's been the dreaded R word has cropped up a few times over the past couple of weeks.
Ridiculous.
Well, you can go with that, but I was relegation.
Not that word.
But that could just become part of people's vocabulary when you're speaking about Spurs over the coming weeks, because the fixtures aren't getting any easier now. Because after Brentford, there's a United at home, Ipswich away, City at home. So Spurs have to start getting those points on the board.
Yeah.
Or else they're in trouble.
No,
Serious trouble.
Not disagreeing with you at all. The only thing, and I've said this before, is that they can score goals, and that is something that maybe others down the bottom of the table can't. But the other side kind of issue with that is they're running low on attackers. I mean, if Richarlison is injured now, I mean that in itself would just be utterly ridiculous. If he's got another injury kind of thing. We'll find out at the press conference on Wednesday, probably the latest with that. But if he's injured, then their attack, pretty much fit player-wise, is Kulusevski, Son, and Mikey Moore. That's it. I'm trying to think if there's anyone else I'm missing.
If you wanted to put Will Lancashire in there,
you could.
I was just having a look at the injured players earlier. I can remember he said with Timo, it'd be 3 to 4 weeks.
Yeah.
I think this weekend will be probably 3 weeks on from when he injured himself at Tamworth. So he could be back soon.
So you're saying Timo Werner going to save the season?
I'm not going that far, but you never know. But I think what it highlights is got to do something in the transfer market before Brentford by bringing an attacker in. Whoever. You need someone in. Because to be 27 days into the window and having only signed one goalkeeper, they've hung out Ange and the rest of the squad to dry. Absolutely killed them with it.
Yeah, they have. There's no, and there's no getting away from it. And I think this is why so much of the kind of the anger on Sunday was towards Levy and the hierarchy, the board, whoever you want to call it, the owners, whatever, all of the above, because. Yeah, I mean, what's that? That'd be 4 weeks into the window tomorrow, and not a single outfield player has even got close by the sound of it as well. You know, every time we've asked Ange, it's been like, no, there's nothing imminent. That's disgraceful, really, when your manager's been saying they need help, they need help, they need help, they need help, like literally every 3 days in press conferences, and then the press conference after matches, and the players are dropping like flies it seems like every week he gets someone back and then he loses one or two. There's no kind of, even now you're kind of thinking, oh, next week, in the coming week, you could have Romero, Van der Ven, Spence all back in time for kind of Brentford. But then you also think, yeah, but who else is going to get lost? You know, they can come back and then there could be 4 more go out. And there's been no help. There's been no ability to rotate. And I know a lot of people have said, throw in the kids, throw in the academy youngsters and all that. It's just, I don't subscribe to that, really. There's certain players like Mikey Moore. Mikey Moore is a terrific talent. And even at 17, you can see what he's able to do at that stage. But also you can, at the same time, see that he is just a young kind of, I had to use the word boy, it's not in a patronizing way, but he's not 18-year-old yet. You know, he is a boy and he is up against these kind of big physical defenders. And you can see that he's still doing very well, but you can't rely on players like that. And the academy, you know, under 21's having such a difficult season. They're like they're right down low in the Premier League 2 table. I can't remember exactly what position they're in now.
21st or
I
something.
think it is. I think I put that in my talking points, didn't I? Yeah, they're 21st, and they're struggling. I think they've only won 3 or 4 games all season. So to suggest that those players suddenly you could transplant them into a Premier League side that's struggling as well and expect them to do the business is such a huge ask. They needed senior players. They needed more bodies to come in. They needed at least 2, maybe even 3 players to come in this window just to bolster their numbers, even if they're short-term loans, just to give him a squad to work with. I think you use that. It's a great expression. They have hung him out to dry, and I do wonder if that's an element of why, he's still in the job. Really, is because there's this ridiculous amount of injuries, and he hasn't had any help. I don't know. I'm sure Spurs and Daniel Levy don't do, kind of regret or sympathy or anything like that. I don't get the impression it's that kind of club, certainly with the way that Poch had so much credit in the bank for 5.5 years, but they didn't even hesitate when Mourinho was suddenly available to get rid of him. It was 12 hours, wasn't it? And then he was in the job. So yeah, it's an absolute disgrace, really. And there were banners around the stadium in that south stand, especially. I think I've got what they said here. One of them, which has kind of done the rounds, said 24 years, 16 managers, 1 trophy, time for change. There was another one towards the back of the south stand that said, our game is about glory, Levy's game is about greed. There was actually some video footage, which was a little bit kind of disturbing, really, showing stewards trying to pull down the first one I mentioned, the 24 years one. I mean, that's wrong in itself. It's like, if you're kind of stopping your fans from kind of having their own free speech and be disgruntled, it's not a good look at all. I thought that was really, really poor. Whether that was just steward thinking they were doing the right thing by their employers or whether they were told to, I have absolutely no idea. But it wasn't a good look.
I can understand with that one, if there's something like really offensive on the banner, then take it down. But they're merely just stating facts.
I know. Yeah. And we had the loud music after. Were you at that final game, Lucas Moura's farewell one? I can't remember. Were you with me for that one?
Yeah, was that Brentford at home?
Yes, it was
something
Brentford.
like that. Yeah, I can remember it.
We're essentially holding our ears because they knew there were going to be boos and general disgruntlement, and they put the music up so loud it was actually painful to sit and finish off our work while we were trying to watch the lap of honour. And poor Lucas Moura was like trying to say goodbye and he was crying his eyes out, yet it was the most awkward lap of honour because the noise was so uncomfortable. And yesterday, straight away, honestly, it must have been a split second from that final whistle going that music pumped out. And it's look, they play music at the end of every game, so I get that, but my goodness, it felt like it was like slowly someone was turning the volume knob up all the time, and it's just wrong. It's just the club is in a really kind of embarrassing way right now, and it doesn't help itself. We've had the reports that come out this week, the financial stuff, looking into the wage to revenue ratio, and Spurs. I think they've got I don't know whether you want to call it the top, but the least or the lowest number, 42% of wages to revenue for I think it was the 23-24 season. And that number will have only come down in this season because they've had so many kind of high earning players go out the door and replace them with teenagers. So it's only going to get worse in the next set that come out in a year's time. And fans see that and they associate that with a lack of ambition. That's how they see it. They don't see it as, well done, that's great business practice. They see it as, you're not investing enough of the revenue that's come into the salary, the wage structure. And then that's why other clubs are overtaking them. And just honestly, the atmosphere was just dreadful. And then kind of waiting for Postecoglou to come out for his press conference and seeing what he was going to be like. And he got into a bit of a little thing in the tunnel where someone was having a bit of a pop at him, and he kind of he looked like he'd gone in and he came back and answered back, or he just glared at them. And you kind of think, don't do that. Just there's no need to. It looks like you're picking fights with fans then, even if whatever they said, I don't know what they said. It might have been something fine. It might have been something abusive. I don't know. but it's just not a good look. It's a bit of the same when he does these post-match interviews with radio and TV, and he just is a little bit off with them. That then becomes this narrative that he's in a really bad mood and everything. He'll come in a press conference like minutes later and be absolutely fine with us, but it gives the narrative to, because more people will see like what he does on Match of the Day and they listen to him on the radio, and more will be made of those little moments. I don't think he does himself any favors whatsoever with those kind of reactions to stuff like that, when this is a guy that's been almost 3 decades in coaching. He should probably know better than to get drawn into stuff like that.
Yeah, let's get into the match anyway.
Yes.
I've only seen extended highlights because I had to cover.
You did well.
Yeah, I had to cover another game this weekend, so it's probably helped me out with that actually, not having to watch 90 minutes of it. But looking at the first half, it was pretty much Spurs on top. Leicester had a couple of openings. I think one of them was to Jordan Ayew on the edge of the area. His effort was blocked. But in terms of Spurs chances, Bergvall teed up Porro, Leicester keeper, good save. Son was really, really unlucky with one of them running across the area and forcing Keeping's fingertip save at the far post. And then Richarlison got his goal, as you said at the start of the show. Really good, brave header from a fantastic cross from Porro.
Yeah, smashed into the post as well, didn't he? I don't know whether any of that caused any issue. He turned funny or something, but he seemed to be fine afterwards. He did the ball up the jumper kind of celebration, didn't he, to show that he's going to be a dad. And there was also, Sonny had a shot that was tipped onto the crossbar as well. They had more. It's unfortunately, that's probably been the classic story of first halves for Spurs, having enough chances but not taking them. And over the course of the game, they had a couple more times that the keeper was called into action. Porro hit the crossbar, deflected free kick in the second half as well. They had more than enough opportunities to put the game to bed, but they just didn't do it. And it feels like right now, if they don't take their chances, they're going to be punished because their defending just isn't good enough in key moments. And again, it was shown, it was exposed yesterday, and not good. What I was going to ask you a question. So they lost Maddison before the game, which Postecoglou said he was a bit sore after the previous game against Hoffenheim, and he had no choice really but to play Pat Matasar, who wasn't fit. He actually said 2 players shouldn't have been playing. I don't know who the other one was, whether that was just people in the kind of over the limit of they shouldn't replay matches, whether that's Ben Davies, who's played so much since he come back, might have been Richarlison, I don't know. But was that the only move, or should he have turned to Reguilon with Gray in midfield?
I was just going to suggest that.
Yeah.
I know Sergio Reguilon's not really a first choice player at Spurs, hasn't been for a number of years under a number of different managers. But I think when you're in this situation now, I think you've got to turn to him, because I think it was Newcastle when he came on in the second half, and I thought he was really, really good that day. Might not be the ideal player to play in that role, but you've got to work with what's in front of you, what's at your disposal at the minute. And yeah, I'd probably say should have maybe gone with that one, but it's all well and good saying that in hindsight. I know he's got limited players to work with at the moment, all of those really, really tired because they're playing football non-stop at the moment. But the Ange probably really maybe has to help himself at some times by maybe taking some of the players out. And if it's Reguilon, might not be in his, thoughts for a long-term position at the club. But we're talking about the here and now. He's fit, he's on the bench, he can do a job at left back. If it means not playing Sars, Sar could have injured himself in that game. This is the thing. And then you have him on the sidelines for a lot longer. But as I was saying, there's just limited options for him right now.
Yeah, you've nailed it. That's what I was going to say about the injury thing. In that, if I'm going to say that it's kind of just poor and negligent, I suppose, that the club have not helped him in the transfer window. In moments like that, it's kind of a negligence to that as well, because exactly that, if Sarr had picked up or worsened his injury or whatever, I mean, I think he kind of almost indicated that Sarr kind of offered himself to play or something like that. And I mean, Bassoon was on the bench and couldn't even clearly come on. Otherwise, he would have done in that second half. But if you've got a player there, regardless of his situation, yeah, look, I know Reguilon should not be at the club anymore. He's not. He shouldn't. They've wanted to get rid of him for like 3 years, isn't it? It's like he's still there, and he doesn't fit the system. He's got no intention to clearly go because he probably gets a payday, I guess, at the end of the season with a free move. But ultimately, you got to turn to him. You just have to. If he's fit and he's fresh and he's able to play, you just have to do it. Whether he was thinking in his head, I can always bring him on, whereas maybe if he can't last a full amount of time, who do I bring on? But then use Sarr anyway. Yeah, I mean, Gray, it's not like Gray would have had a kind of a, it would have been a tougher day for him in the midfield and use up more energy than a fullback in that system. You're up and down the pitch constantly. So he was already putting in the yards. So yeah, that was for me was an area that I didn't understand. I kind of understood not starting Mikey more because I think with Mikey, you're not going to get the tracking back and defending with him right now. He's probably not at that stage yet. But whereas in the second half of the game, he can cause real problems, especially if the opposition are starting to tire. But yeah, I didn't get the Reguilon one, even as not the biggest Reguilon fan myself. I still think when your options are pretty much the 11 you have, and you do have someone else who's fresh and didn't play in midweek, I just think you have to use him. I just think you do, and I think he kind of let himself down a little bit with that one for me.
Because I mean, this impacts Thursday as well against Elfsborg because Reguilon can't play. Jed Spence might be fit, but he can't play because he's ineligible. Yep. And now, who knows with Sarr? He might have to miss out Thursday.
Yeah,
possibly.
Yeah, it's a mess.
Right, before we talk about Leicester's 2 goals at the start of the second half, Ali is going to tell us about the benefits of using NordVPN, something I'm sure you used out in Germany last week.
Very good, very good. I was wondering how you're going to work that one in because I was all ready to just go on holiday tomorrow, just for the cause. You know, stuff always seems to happen when I'm away, so why not? Yes, I did use it in Germany. It was very helpful to kind of. I was watching one of the shows I watched back home actually, which I watched that in the tiny moments of downtime while traveling on the German trains that were so unreliable, which I was really surprised at. All stereotypes of German trains being efficient and all that absolutely were not. But yes, I did have NordVPN, which is reliable, and I was able to call upon that to be able to watch things from back home, to be able to, if I wanted to, watch and book and do things from abroad that I wouldn't be able to do if I was just trying to do them through the UK web. This way I could switch my phone to thinking it's abroad or vice versa. And you can kind of open up the world on your device, really. And on top of all of that, NordVPN is the fastest VPN in the world. It means no buffering, no lagging, and you can stream your favorite shows from anywhere in the world without your bandwidth throttling. It can help you with security aspect. You know, certainly a lot of those trains that I was on had their own kind of public Wi-Fi, and having NordVPN helps you if you want to use stuff like that to go some way to kind of locking down your phone and stopping people getting into them through that public Wi-Fi. And yeah, so many things you could do with it. And on top of all of that, you can get the best discount possible off your NordVPN plan by going to nordvpn.com/Gold Guest. And as a special thing with our podcast, our link there gives you 4 extra months on the 2-year plan. And there's no risk with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. And in case you missed that link, it's in the episode podcast description box.
Right, let's discuss Leicester's 2 goals. I mean, for Spurs to be 1-0 up at the break, you've got players who are extremely jaded at the moment just because of the amount of games they've been playing. The last thing you want to do is concede straight after the restart, and that's exactly what happened. About less than a minute, Jamie Vardy nipping in between Kinski and Davis to convert Bobby Decord over Reed's cross. I mean,
had to be Vardy, didn't it?
It's always Vardy.
I think that was his 10th. Was it his 10th goal against Spurs? I think someone told me that.
Right, and I mean, he scored the first game of the season at the King Power Stadium as well, and
38 as well.
Yeah, 38. He's probably still Leicester's best player.
Yeah, he's still got his pace. I kind of thought, oh, he's going to be really slow, and I watched him kind of do a foot race down the right, and it was like, oh no, he can still run.
But I mean, looking at this goal from one of the angles, it's again just such a bad one for Spurs to concede. Davis doesn't deal with it. Kinski doesn't either. And Vardy, what a present for him.
Yeah.
Just waiting there to convert. And yeah, as I said, the last thing Spurs needed to do at the start of the second half.
That's it. You kind of come out from half time and you think, okay, you're goal up, kind of continue that dominance, keep control of the game. Oh no, you've done completely opposite. And it was like Porro caught upfield as he is, and he'll get flack for that, but it is kind of part of the system, isn't it? That at times he's going to get caught upfield, and then if that's the case, the defense has to be able to deal with it. And Dragusin was very slow coming across as well to kind of cover that space. That allowed the cross to come in, and yeah, Davies. I actually thought at the time, I think I thought it was Dragusin, but it wasn't. It was Davies, and he slid and got nowhere near it. Kinski made a complete mess of it as well. Probably one of the first real kind of goalkeeping bits with his hands that he's messed up since he's arrived, and he was really kind of mistimed it. I don't know whether Davies sliding put him off. I don't know. But he was nowhere near it. And then it kind of almost hit Vardy, didn't it? And bounced against him, and then he was able to just whack it into the empty net. It was just a dreadful goal to concede from all of them, really. Everyone involved. No one kind of took any credit out of that at all. The entire back four, I mean, you could say Archie Gray wasn't really involved, but everyone else in that back, the rest of the four in the back five, just couldn't deal with it. And yeah, just completely changed the tone of the game at that point, because suddenly Leicester got their tails up.
Yeah, and went on 5 minutes later to score. Bilal El Khanous getting it. This all came from a really bad pass from Porro to Benteke, sold him short, allowed Leicester to nip in. And very much like Ndai's goal for Everton the other week, he was just allowed so much time and space to run towards the box, and good finish from him, but you can tell from Kinski's reaction that he wasn't pleased at all by no one going out to challenging the player. Thoughts on it?
Well, the amount of times we've spoken about, there's two common threads in Spurs goals this season, it feels like. One, the origin comes from Porro's side of the pitch, unfortunately, just does, whether it's in the box or whether it's from that flank. And the other aspect to it is the goals that are conceded when Spurs just stand off players. I don't get it. I don't understand it. You kind of, how many times is someone going to score from the edge of the box before you realise, oh yeah, standing off, it doesn't really lower the percentage of them scoring. It isn't working at all. It was curled around the defender. Kinski probably unsighted as well, as I imagine, because he didn't really move to it too well. Just as poor defending for that goal as it was for the first goal for me. And yeah, I know it's a makeshift defence, and I know they're knackered, but still, those are decisions. I mean, Postecoglou might say because they're mentally fatigued, they're making decisions like that, and it could be the case, but still, it kind of feels like we've seen goals like that all season, and it's been part of their downfall, really.
Yeah, they're just the basics as well, just going out to close your man down. But not to be on this occasion. Spurs did threaten a couple of times after that. Porro hitting the crossbar with a deflected free kick, hitting Vardy on the top of his head and almost going in. And then there was a bit of a move where Porro found himself down the right, had Archie Gray in the box, had Son just inside the area as well in a decent position, and he's, for whatever reason, decided to go for goal from the tightest of angles, and he's hit the side netting, and both of those players there just stood with their arms out like, what on earth are you doing?
He did that twice. He did it earlier in the game as well, hitting the side netting, and it was like, you don't have to go for some spectacular tight angle shot. Even that's exactly what Postecoglou wants, is the players to get to the side and pull it across. It's the thing they're probably trained the most to do. And he went for goal both times. Mad.
Did you tell him to do this in your interview with him last week?
No, I said, Pedro, stick to the system, man, and stop having goals conceded behind you. Yeah, I mean, if anyone hasn't read the interview of Porro, it's probably not what you want to read right now, to be honest, because you're probably annoyed at the fact that his party played in both goals. But it is actually a really nice interview, not through my doing, through the fact that he opened up on a lot of stuff, and yeah, he's a very interesting chap, and he did pretty much 99% of it in English, which was very impressive as well. But yes, I would absolutely understand if it wasn't your cup of tea right now with the mood people are in, probably with Spurs, but it is a nice interview that does humanise him a fair bit.
Yes. So that was it from Tottenham on Sunday against Leicester. Couldn't get the equaliser. So I think 4 straight defeats now in the Premier League. Not won in the league since Southampton. And these defeats in the league are worryingly becoming a habit. I mean, it's like when you're winning, that becomes a habit. But for Spurs at the moment, it's just losing. And that's why they find themselves in 15th in the Premier League table. So you were in Ange's post-match presser. What was his mood like?
It was all right. It started a little bit like, oh goodness, he came in and it was very. You could see how gutted he was by it all. But as it kind of wore on, there was a bit more fight in him and a bit more kind of talking about. I mean, he was asked straight off, because he was talking about these players that are almost back, and like he was asked quite straight off, do you feel you're going to be around though in 10 to 12 days to kind of get the most of the people coming back into the squad? And he was like, who knows? Who knows? And the thing that he says, which is true, you can see it in the performances, is that the players are still behind him. They are trying to give him everything they've got. Just unfortunately, they haven't got a lot right now. And he said he could see that every time he comes into work every day, you can see the belief in the players and what they're doing still. And he's got his coaches around him, and he feels that they're all buying in still and trying to make these things happen. But ultimately, there's a physical element to it as well, and a limitation on what they can achieve, because they're just dead on their feet, so many of them. I mean, some of the runs Archie Gray was managing to make as a left back, like showing quick feet and getting down the touchline. I was thinking, ooh, that is being 18. That is, I vaguely remember never being of a Premier League standard, of course, but as an 18-year-old, how you got your energy back so quickly the next day, didn't you? The recovery times are so much less, but. Yeah, I mean, just still the fact that they're relying on 2 18-year-olds. Bergvall again gave everything in the midfield. I thought Bentancur was really good first half. He was like leading the press and stuff, but naturally he's played less games, so he started to tire. That's the irony, isn't it? Is the fresh players they've got are now being overplayed, so they're getting tired because they haven't got the minutes in their legs from before. That's just ridiculous. Just bring players in. I know it's a January window. I know it's hard. I know they're trying all of these lines that are trotted out all the time. But my goodness, they've had so long to do it, and it's so obvious. And just, I'm sorry, it's at the point now where, last season the big thing, wasn't it, was that the players he was bringing in didn't fit the system. The likes of Emerson, Eric Dyer, Højbjerg, players like that. But, you look back on it now, and even those 3 players, if you'd had them to rotate in some of these games, Spurs would not be where they are. They just wouldn't. I mean, how many times last year we said Højbjerg came on and kind of protected leads and things like that. And yeah, he didn't fit the system, but they've just never really just replaced the depth, I suppose, because they've got so many teenagers. I mean, Yang's on the bench. Jan Min-hyuk is on the bench. There was never any danger of him coming onto that pitch at any point. He clearly is nowhere near the level yet that they need him to be, because he's making this big transition from a very different league. And from what I understand, he could go out on loan before the window closes. He could yet still do that, just so that they can kind of develop him a bit further. But obviously, you're not going to do that unless you bring in an attacker. But then the flip side is, would he play anyway? I don't know. He might. We can't play Thursday, but who knows? They keep dropping like flies. You might end up having to use him, and then people may be seeing that he's not ready, or he could just surprise everyone and be the best thing ever. But I find it so frustrating when everyone is saying the same things over and over and over and over again, and Spurs just aren't learning any lessons. It's in danger of being like those 2 windows under Poch, in his like last full season when they didn't strengthen, when everyone was saying you need to, and they didn't do it, and then shock horror, the entire foundation started to crumble that he had because it just didn't work. And they're in danger of having another window like that if they don't sort it out quickly. I mean, to be honest, a lot of the damage has already been done.
Oh, 100%. Totally agree with you. In terms of the substitutes yesterday, there was only 8 on the bench. We're saying Young's not ready. Bissouma's clearly not in a place to play at the moment. So that's 6 subs you've really got. There's 2 keepers on there or 1?
No, just 1.
Just 1.
I think.
Right.
I'll check, but yeah, go on. Keep making your point while I double check.
I mean, that just shows how limited the options are at the moment. It's just crazy that nothing's been done to help those numbers. And it does strike me as, oh, we'll wait till the injured players come back and you'll be all right. We won't bother bringing anyone in. But yeah, not good. Just what you were saying a couple of minutes ago in terms of not replacing players like Emerson, Højbjerg. Hasn't there been talk of Emerson maybe leaving AC Milan this month?
Bringing him back.
They need a centre back.
I think, if I remember correctly, he's out injured for about 6-8 weeks. I think I heard that yesterday, which has kind of scuppered his move from there. So yeah, I mean, hey, it would be very in keeping as Spurs bring him in. He's injured. But yeah, no, there was only Brandon Austin on the bench yesterday afternoon. But even Will Lancashire, it's like, I've watched a lot of Will. I've interviewed him a couple of times. He's a great, young striker that's going to hopefully have a very good career in the game. But again, kind of throwing him into these situations, I don't really think he's ready for that level and prolonged exposure to that level yet. I think he is in desperate need of a development loan, League One, Championship, whatever it is, just to kind of build him up. And I think, I don't want to sound, I really don't want to sound critical because, these are very young players and they've got so much further to go in their career and so much more to learn and be better. But I think you've kind of seen in the moments recently where he's been put onto the pitch, it hasn't really been able to make the impact that he would have wanted. And I think part of that is he's not quite ready for this level yet. Scored a goal in the Europa League, which is terrific. And obviously we know then went and got sent off. But he, in a normal squad at a normal club, would have been able to head out on loan, at the start of this season to go and then have a proper season somewhere instead of kind of hanging around because they didn't really have the options because Richarlison was out and Solanke was out and things like that. And yeah, I kind of really hope they pull their finger out and get an attacker or 2 in because that will allow him to head out on a loan that he desperately needs.
Yeah, I asked Ange about this on Friday. Obviously, I didn't have any Richarlison questions to ask in this press conference. So,
that must have been really difficult.
Asked about
another striker.
Yeah, asked about Lancashire instead because of Solanke's injury. Because 2 weeks ago, Ange was saying because Alfie Dorrington's gone out on loan, we'll probably look now at trying to get a loan move for Will. So I think Solanke's situation, because he's got to be out for 6 weeks now, that complicates things and impacts Will because given Richarlison's injury now, if it is to be another one where he needs time on the sidelines, then you need to keep Will at the club where in reality he needs a loan deal.
Yeah. I agree. Can I just get another little bugbear off my chest? Because a few people were mentioning it yesterday and it's people looking at Bournemouth and Iraola. And I get it. He's a terrific coach, absolutely terrific coach. He's done a brilliant job there. And if he were to one day become a manager of Tottenham Hotspur, I'm sure he would be very good. However, what I don't really buy into right now is the comparisons with Spurs and what's happening. I don't. Yeah, Bournemouth have had a lot of injuries. I would maybe argue not as many key players that they've lost. But other than I think I've mentioned before, the fact that they're playing 1 game a week, which is so important to be able to have those players still fresh for the next week's game. But the other aspect that I think is kind of, I just find it shows you the different perception and spin that happens if you win matches, is that Iraola isn't getting blamed for all of the injuries they've got, despite the fact that he's got a high-intensity running style of football, and they are picking up a fair few muscle injuries as well. But with Postecoglou, because they're losing games, it's all because of Postecoglou. It's his fault. He's running them into the ground, even though we know and Porro said it in his interview, they're barely training at any intensity because every day is almost a recovery day right now. So yeah, that's just annoying me. I had to say it. It's just like, I get it, and he's a terrific manager. He's doing well, but he seems to not be getting any of the same questions or about the injuries, really, as far as I'm aware, that Postecoglou gets. And I know it is because they're winning games. And that, hey, if you can win games, it kind of masks over anything, and that's great. And if you're losing games, then understandably everything's going to be kind of pulled apart and looked at. And yeah, but I just kind of feel it's a bit of an unfair comparison overall, more than anything.
Yeah. Something else I want to add on that.
Yeah.
Why, if I was in Irola's shoes, why would you swap Bournemouth for Tottenham right now?
100%. 100%.
Bournemouth are in a European position. I only think they're a couple of points off the Champions League places. And the form
could be top 5 this season, isn't it?
Yeah, form they're in at the moment, you'd fancy him to maybe get a European place. And yeah, I understand the fact that Spurs are a much bigger club than Bournemouth. The stadium's fantastic. The training ground facilities are fantastic. You've got to be working with some really good players. But look at what's happened at Spurs. The past few managers, what, you're getting 18 months, if that. Apart from Poch, who had 5.5 years. So why would you swap, a job where he can't really lose, can he? At Bournemouth, he's in that good a position. He's taken him to some incredible heights. So why, leave there to go to Spurs, and then 18 months down the line, you're looking for a new job?
Do you think that's what's helped Postecoglou right now, is the lack of viable mid-season options for them?
Yeah, maybe, because you're looking at, we keep getting like the odds list through on the emails, and there's the likes of Kieran McKenna, Marco Silva, Thomas Frank. And again, with Thomas Frank, why would you leave Brentford for Spurs? But if Ange goes, who do you get in? Is it Ryan Mason? Is there going to be that much of a difference if Ryan Mason takes it on for the end till the end of the season?
I think an immediate 2-3 weeks, I don't think is any difference whoever you bring in. I think it could be Arne Slot could come to Spurs, and I don't think he looks at it and goes, who do I play this week? There's no one there to play. So I don't think that changed. I think Ryan Mason, I think that would be embarrassing for Spurs to have to turn to him for a third time. It was a bit like they used to always turn to David Pleat, would be the caretaker manager. And it kind of feels like now it's like Ryan, yeah. Have you still got all the stuff you need? Yeah, brilliant. Come in, you're needed. But again, is it going to change that much? I think what will change is getting players back and getting players through the door. And I do feel like, and I know there's now, I think losing games has absolutely turned more and more. I've said this before, every defeat turns more and more fans against Postecoglou. But I kind of feel like he should at least be given the chance to try and play matches with any semblance of a squad. But yes, I also do see that they're in a struggle right now. So
yeah, if it came to it, would Matt Wells get it over Ryan because he's above him in the coaching pecking order?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Would you go to Mason because of experience before? Would you go to Wells because he's the senior man in the coaching setup ahead of him? Wells was Mason's assistant manager for the second time he did it as well.
Yeah.
So there's a really weird hierarchy thing that's kind of going on. Is just continuing within the club right now, would that be the right thing? It's really difficult because Matt Wells, there's like people rave about him and like how he's going to be a terrific manager at some point. And Mason, they've said that as well. And obviously the Anderlecht job earlier in the season didn't quite work out, did it? It was Anderlecht, wasn't it? Yeah, it was. But is that seen as a continuation? Do they kind of get tarred with a brush when you kind of work within the organization? And, I do think there's some kind of this suspicion, probably quite unfairly, that, they're part of Levy's kind of group because they've been there before. It's more just that they're former Spurs players that are involved in the club. And there are plenty of people that do that within the club. For me, I think there's not really a viable option right now. I was trying to think of like out of work managers as well, but there's quite a few of those are a risk. There's a few of those that will completely change the style of football back to the football that everyone hated before.
Sean Dyche.
Sean Dyche, he would bring the sexy football, and the wins. Yeah, I was kind of I really went down the kind of out of work manager list, and someone was, only because he was there at the train platform as well in Germany at Frankfurt Airport. Jurgen Klinsmann was there, and someone in the group that we were talking to as Spurs fans, there's a couple of journalists. One of the fans was saying, I really want I'd have Jurgen Klinsmann back as the manager. I mean, let's be honest, Jurgen Klinsmann would be an absolute disaster. I'm sorry, he would. His club management career, not the best. Fair. I think if you speak to anyone inside Bayern Munich about his time there, I think if you speak to Korean fans right now about how his spell went as the national team manager, I don't think that would be a viable option. Do you remember last time? He kind of kept putting himself into the equation, didn't he? He was saying stuff like, "Yeah, did he say he's like tried to ring Daniel Levy or something? I can't remember. There was something about a phone call or something. I can't remember. But yeah, it's like a bit like the idea of getting Harry Redknapp back. It's a lovely thought. It's a lovely idea. Hey, if anyone deserves another go, it's Martin Jol. Bring him back if you're going to go for like former managers. But no, they need to kind of decide exactly what they're doing here. And at the moment, they're sticking with Postecoglou, but you just know what that club's like. And if things start to wobble even more and the attention's even more on the owners and Levy in the hierarchy, then we've seen what history does. And history has always brought a change, unfortunately.
Yeah, you putting your talking points today. The club are attempting to sign at least one player.
At least. Can I say that? When I put that out, everyone went, they're signing one player. And the outrage, I was like, at least. I mean, they might not sign anyone. This is Spurs. Who knows? But I did say at least.
I mean, we're at the stage now where it's just going to feel like a panic buy, maybe, whoever they bring in, if it's not like a top player. And I mean,
even just another body. I'd take a panic buy or a panic loan just to get some legs in there.
Yeah. I mean, this was said at the press conference on Friday when there's a few of us talking like, why didn't Spurs just go for Ben Godfrey on loan?
100%.
At the start of the month. And Ben can play all across the back line, and he just gives Archie and Radu a rest at some point, even if it's just till the end of the season. But he's gone to Ipswich now, so.
Well, exactly. I think George Sessions from PA it was him who was saying that Radu Dragusin has played every single game since, I can't remember when it was, maybe Man City.
It'll be, when Mickey went off against City.
And
there was a game. Yeah, he's pretty much started every game because when he came on early against Chelsea when Romero went off injured.
Yes, he did, didn't he? Yeah.
And I was saying as well, I mean, there was talk going into the season about how much football Dragusin's going to play this season because clearly Romero and Van der Ven are the first choice in the defensive pecking order. But Dragusin probably will play more than Romero and Van der Ven now this season.
Well, you're not including the glorious run to the Europa League final and the FA Cup final. That was one of the things that Ange said after as well. He said that how difficult it is right now and how tough it all looks. But the irony is, and he still feels this, that it could be a very special final 3 months of the season. There's going to have to be a lot of work done to get him to that stage. But I get what he means. If he can get anything resembling a proper squad of players, they're in a good position in a lot of things to do something. But they got to get there.
You just know what's going to happen. Spurs this season, it'll be finish in the bottom half, but get to 3 cup finals and lose them all. That's what it'll be.
Yeah.
You know what Spurs are like.
Absolutely. Tottenham Hotspur, what a club.
Yes. So in terms of the transfer window, then what needs to be the priority?
That's it, isn't it? What?
Which position for you is priority? Centre back or new attacker?
I think like I've said, I use the expression again. I think the damage has been done at centre back. I think now with Romero and Van der Ven back in training, Ben Davies somehow managing to play every minute, Dragish in there. I think probably the time has passed when they really needed a short-term option there as a centre back. So I would say definitely an attack. Like I said, the bare minimum right now what they've got, and Solanke has kind of stuffed that even further. Not him, but his knee in that awkward shot that he took. I know Ange said a couple of weeks back it wasn't a centre forward he was looking for. It was more like an attacker who presumably can play just across the three. I wonder whether you're looking at a striker now as well, because if Richarlison, there is an issue there. If there is an issue there, and Solanke not coming back till maybe the City, the game, Bournemouth game, something like that, you need a striker up there because Son is not a central striker. Seeing him trying to hold the ball up and stuff like that, it's just not his game. You have to use him in different ways. So, yeah, I wonder now whether you try to look for a striker and a winger just to bolster your numbers. It's still absolutely criminal that they didn't get a left back in at the start of the season. I still feel like now, they don't have a fit left back because they only had one. We're not counting Ben Davies anymore because he's a centre back. He's a centre back under Postecoglou, even though Postecoglou said when I asked about left backs a little while back, oh yeah, and there's Ben Davies. No, you don't use him there. You use Archie Gray there more than him, and he's a midfielder. But we're in this situation, aren't we? Same as last season when Skippy had to play as a left back. We're using midfielders as left backs again because they didn't sort it out in the summer. And, the fact that they're now in this situation is mad. I wonder if they were looking at someone like Dorgu, who's probably heading to United, isn't he? Whether he was someone they'd kind of eyed up and then United came in there. I don't think Arsenal looking for attackers or strikers is really going to help them either. But yeah, I'd say the attack is where it's now at, but I would also like to see a left back. I'd like to see about 10 players come in at this stage just to kind of bolster the squad, but I think we know that's not going to happen.
Yeah, I know a lot of fans have said like Liam Delap at Ipswich, he'd be a really good striker to bring in, but I just can't see that happening because why would Ipswich sell the star man? And that effectively probably just seals their return to the Championship at the first time of asking. But
it's the same with Dibling, wasn't it, at Southampton, really? It's like that's a player who I could absolutely imagine him for the summer. I think he's very much a Spurs player. A Spurs profile of transfer. Again, 18 years old, which you can have your own thoughts on, but he's doing very well. But also, why would Southampton let him go now in the middle of a season? That would be crazy.
Yeah. For me, if you were looking at a striker, do you just go for Jonathan David at Lille? He's out of contract in the summer. It'd be better financially to sign him in the summer when he's on the free. But you need a striker now, so just get him on the cut price deal.
And he can play out wide, can't he, as well? So I think it's on the left, maybe. I'm trying to remember now when we did all our research on him because Spurs have looked at him. He's a player they've got some interest in. And I agree with you. If you can get him for a cut price deal now, why are they not going for it? And Lille surely would take some money more than nothing.
Yeah, I wonder if Rashford comes into the equation the longer, the closer we get to deadline day.
Maybe it depends probably on the wages, isn't it? That's where the wage structure comes into play, I suppose.
Yeah. So Thursday against Elfsborg in the Europa League. Spurs in a good position now to qualify. A win against the Swedish side, and they will qualify as one of the top 8. They'll advance straight to the round of 16 rather than having to go through a 2-legged knockout phase playoff tie in February, which will certainly help them out in terms of the schedule. Spurs on paper.
On paper.
You would fancy them to beat Elfsborg, but they got a decent result last week. They beat Nice at home. So it's going to be a tough one. And again, limited players. You think Basuma position to play, maybe?
Who knows? I mean, the fact he was on the bench suggests surely that he was getting towards somewhere. I think Basuma, and we just don't know about Sarr and Maddison now. They're unknowns, really. If you don't have either of those, I don't know what you're doing there. You're going to have to play an academy kid in some role. I think you're just going to have to, regardless of whether he feels they're ready or not.
Yeah. I don't know. Does Callum Olasese start?
That's it. That's what I'm thinking, probably, because Gray's going to have to play again as a left back. It's just the same team, just been run into the ground. It's just I've never seen anything like it.
Yeah, so we'll leave that there for today's latest episode of Gold Guest Talk Tottenham. We'll be back probably either later this week or early next week. Big week coming up for Spurs, not only in terms of the Elfsborg and Brentford games, but in terms of the transfer window as well. And hopefully next time it'll be a more positive and upbeat podcast.
Hope so.
But let's wait and see. It's Tottenham after all. So as ever, thank you for tuning in, and just keep with us at football.london for all your latest Tottenham news. To get the best discount off your NordVPN plan, go to nordvpn.com/Gold Guest. Our link will also give you 4 extra months on the 2-year plan. There's no risk with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. The link is in the podcast episode description box.